For 5,000 years, the name human had been erased from galactic records. Not outlawed, just forgotten. Lost in the endless churn of empires, species, and wars that burned bright and died cold among the stars. The archivists of the Celestial Concordance, those who claimed to keep the sum of galactic memory, had long dismissed the ancient stories of a violent world at the edge of Orion's arm, a place called Earth. To them, humanity was myth, a tale whispered by fringe traders and half-mad explorers about creatures who thrived on poison worlds, who had once reached for the stars and vanished into silence. In the great cycle of civilizations, species rose and fell with rhythm, but the humans were said to be different. They were born from a death world, a planet so hostile it forged madness into endurance, weakness into adaptation, and pain into art. It was said they had built machines that learned to think, cities that touched the clouds, and weapons that could unmake continents. And then, nothing. A vanishing so complete, it was as though the universe had swallowed them whole. So when the Dominion War broke out between the Tvark hegemony and the Concordance, no one remembered Earth. No one thought to look toward Sol. The galaxy's attention was fixed on fleets of gleaming metal, on plasma storms lighting the void. Civilizations burned. Worlds traded loyalty for survival. And deep beneath that chaos, in the quiet places where old navigation charts still gathered dust, something ancient stirred. On the edge of known space, in the ruins of a forgotten relay station orbiting a dead moon, a signal pulsed for the first time in millennia. It was faint, erratic, but unmistakably structured. It carried no signature, no identifier, only a frequency pattern that predated all modern encryption. The message repeated 3 times, then fell silent. The first to intercept it was not a fleet or a scholar, but a scavenger crew, 5 insectoid Glytherians aboard the freighter Silent Bargain. They found the signal odd enough to sell, not to study. They brought it to the nearest relay world, where it was picked up by the Concordance. And within a day, it reached the desk of scholar Lyra Venn, an archivist who specialized in extinct species. She nearly dropped her datapad when she decoded the linguistic traces. "Impossible," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It's human." Her colleagues laughed. "The humans are legend, Lyra. Pre-space fairy tales. You've been breathing too much archive dust." But Lyra wasn't convinced. The structure of the transmission was archaic, but unmistakable. Terran binary mixed with an ancient distress format used during the first expansion age. The words embedded in it chilled her to the bone. "We endure. We remember. The Deathworlders will rise again." Lyra took her findings to the Concordance Council. They dismissed her with polite indifference. But one of the military observers in the room, Admiral Tyrek Olin, requested a private meeting. "Scholar Venn," he said after the others had left, "let's assume, for the sake of curiosity, that this message is genuine. What do you think it means?" She hesitated. "It means they're still out there. Humanity. Somewhere. After 5,000 years? Yes, or their descendants. Or something worse." Olin smiled thinly. "If it's true, and they've survived this long without being found, then perhaps they don't want to be." The message was classified. The coordinates, deep in the Perseus fringe, were marked restricted. But curiosity had always been Lyra's flaw. Within a week, she had stolen an old research vessel and set course for the coordinates, with nothing but a handful of drones and a ship AI that still mispronounced her name. The journey took 40 days through uncharted void. The closer she came, the darker space seemed to grow. No beacon signals, no traffic. Just the faint whisper of the signal repeating every 22 hours. Then she found it. A system of 9 worlds circling a dim red sun. Only one showed traces of atmosphere, the third from the star. Lyra's sensors picked up a lattice of derelict satellites, ancient, broken, but arranged in perfect geometric alignment. At their center, a massive structure hung in orbit, a ring of black metal kilometers wide, dormant but intact. She maneuvered closer, awe overtaking fear. The hull plating of the ring bore markings no one had seen in 10 millennia. Latin script, faded but legible. Soul Guardian Network, United Earth Defense. She didn't breathe for a long moment. Then, as her ship crossed the ring's shadow, every console flickered. Her navigation systems froze. The AI began to stutter. Uneden. Sig. Nal. A low tone filled the cabin, deep, resonant, ancient. The same pattern she had traced before, but now longer, clearer, layered with hundreds of sub-frequencies. It was not just a distress call. It was a summons. Then, through the static, a voice. Human. Male. Calm. You should not have come here. Lyra's heart stopped. Who are you? She whispered. The voice paused. We are the Forgotten, the shadows that watch the stars. You call us human. We were born of Earth. The signal flared, flooding her sensors with impossible readings. Massive power signatures emerging from the planet below. She turned her ship's cameras toward the surface and gasped. The planet wasn't dead. The storms were moving in patterns, geometric, deliberate. The clouds parted for seconds at a time, revealing glimmers of metallic continents beneath them, flickering with faint light. Impossible, she breathed. It's alive. Then the voice spoke again, quieter now, almost mournful. We were forgotten. But we remember all who came after, and we have watched. Her sensors went black. The ship drifted, powerless. The last thing she saw before losing consciousness was a formation of shapes rising from the planet, dark silhouettes that blotted out the stars. When she woke, her ship was adrift outside the system. Her instruments were fried, her AI silent. But one new file had been placed in her data core, a recording of a human face. The man looked no older than 30. His eyes were cold and bright, his skin pale under the flickering light of some unseen screen. Scholar Ven, he said, as if he had known her name all along. Tell your concordance that we are not extinct. Tell them we watched the galaxy burn while they forgot us. Tell them the Deathworlders have returned. And when they ask where we were, tell them we were learning. The recording ended. She barely made it back to concordance space alive. The Council dismissed her story as delusion, claiming radiation had damaged her mind. But the file spread nonetheless, whispered through black channels, pirate networks, and rebel fleets. The phrase became a ghost across the stars. The Deathworlders have returned. Admiral Olin was one of the first to believe. He had seen too much of the galaxy's cruelty to dismiss such a tale. And deep down, he knew. Every empire feared something lurking in the dark, something that had once been stronger than them all. Within months, Concordance scouts began disappearing along the Perseus fringe. The few distress beacons recovered showed brief flashes of impossible technology. Ships moving faster than warp, weapons bending light itself. By the time the Concordance realized what they had awoken, it was already too late. The first fleet appeared without warning over the mining world of Virel 9. 100 black vessels, silent as night. No broadcasts, no insignia. The defenders hailed them. There was no reply. Then, in perfect coordination, the fleet split apart, not to attack, but to surround the planet like a cage. The Dominion ships scrambled to intercept, but their systems went dead within seconds, every circuit overridden. From the largest of the black vessels, a message was broadcast on all frequencies. This world is under Terran protection. Evacuate. No one knew what Terran meant until Lyra's warning resurfaced. That was when the galaxy remembered. Too late. The humans had returned, not as explorers, not as conquerors, but as something far more unsettling. They had come from the death world that birthed them, shaped by silence and survival, and they carried with them a technology that made the Empire's fleets look like toys. They had been watching, waiting, learning from the mistakes of others, and now, in the age of arrogance and decay, they had decided to step out from the shadows of history. They had come not for vengeance, but for balance. And the galaxy, which had once forgotten them, would soon remember their name again, etched not in legend this time, but in fear, far above the burning skies of Virel 9. As the human fleet descended with quiet precision, their leader stood at the command deck gazing at the stars, His eyes were cold and human, but there was something else behind them, something that had stared too long into the abyss. "Begin retrieval," he said softly. The Deathworlders had returned, and the galaxy's reckoning had only just begun. The storm of their return swept across the Perseus fringe like a silent plague. No banners, no fanfare, just ships that appeared without warning, conquered without firing a shot, and vanished again into the black. Worlds that once belonged to the Concordance or the Dominion now reported new administrators. Humans who never showed their faces, who demanded no tribute, only obedience and silence. What they offered in return was protection from the endless wars that had torn the galaxy for centuries. To the desperate, it was salvation. To the powerful, it was a threat they couldn't comprehend. And to Admiral Tyrek Olin, it was both. He had seen the footage from Virel 9, the Concordance fleet frozen mid-orbit, their systems locked by an invisible hand. 100 ships rendered useless before a single weapon was fired. He had watched the Terran fleet descend, black as night, moving like living shadows. There had been no communication after the evacuation warning. The planet's inhabitants were transported to orbital stations within hours, unharmed, confused but breathing. Then, just as quickly as they had come, the Terrans had left, leaving, behind a message etched into Virel 9's moon in atomic precision: "We remember." Now Olan sat in the command deck of the Norella's Spear, staring at a holomap of the outer sectors. Reports flickered in faster than his aides could categorize them. Black hull ships appearing in border systems. Entire communication arrays going dark. And always, that same message: "This world is under Terran protection." The Council called it psychological warfare. Olin wasn't so sure. It felt more like a warning, a restrained force holding itself back. As if the humans were saying, "We could end you, but we won't. Yet." The Council, blinded by arrogance and fear, decided to strike first. They called it the Reclamation Offensive. 5 battle groups, 120 capital ships, tens of thousands of drones, sent to destroy what they didn't understand. Olin was given command of the 3rd group. His orders were simple: locate the source of Terran power in the Perseus fringe and neutralize it. He knew it was a death sentence, but duty demanded obedience, and so he went. They arrived at a barren system catalogued as PX-4193. No habitable planets, no life, nothing but debris fields. It matched the coordinates the Terran fleet had last been sighted near. The sensor sweeps showed only faint energy signatures, possibly remnants of a battle long past. Olan ordered a cautious advance. Then his communications officer gasped, "Sir, something's happening to the nav grid." The holographic display rippled like disturbed water. Every ship in the formation reported navigation failure at once. Then, one by one, their systems rebooted. But the star map had changed. They were no longer in PX-4193. They were inside a structure. It was vast, an artificial sphere enclosing the entire fleet. The stars had vanished, replaced by a smooth metallic horizon stretching endlessly in all directions. A Dyson shell, not theoretical, not broken, real, operational. "My God," whispered Olin. "They built this." Before his officers could react, a voice filled the bridge, calm, controlled, and unmistakably human. "You were warned, Admiral." Olin stood. "This is Admiral Tyrek Olin of the Concordance 3rd Fleet. Identify yourself." "I am Commander Reese Calder of the Terran Vanguard." "Vanguard? The humans are extinct. Your claim is false." There was a pause. Then the voice replied, quiet but heavy with something deeper than anger: disappointment. "Extinction is mercy. We were denied that." The air around the fleet shimmered. Hundreds of ships appeared, black-hulled vessels larger than anything in known space, their design alien yet disturbingly elegant. They moved in perfect synchrony. No visible engines, no heat signatures, Olin could feel every hair on his body stand on end. Reese spoke again. "Your council believes you can erase us a second time. You cannot. Leave this place." Olin swallowed. "If you are human, then prove it. Stand down and talk. The galaxy doesn't need another war." "Talk?" Reese almost sounded amused. "We tried that long ago, when your kind enslaved the Tyrians, when the hegemony burned Elysium Prime, when the Concordance erased the weak in the name of peace. You call it order. We call it cowardice. What do you want from us?" "Nothing. We want you to remember." The Dyson sphere shifted. Energy surged through its surface like veins of light. Every ship's sensors overloaded. The artificial sun at the center flared once, and in that blinding moment, the fleet's weapon systems, shields, and propulsion all went offline. The Terrans had shut them down with a single pulse. Olin's voice shook. "You could kill us all." "We could," said Reese, "but we won't. Death is easy. We are here to teach you what you forgot. The cost of survival." The transmission ended. When the light faded, the Dyson sphere was gone. The fleet was back in normal space, untouched. Not a single shot fired. But their engines remained dead, their systems unresponsive. The message had been clear. We let you live. It took 3 days before recovery crews found them. By the time Olan returned to the Concordance capital, panic had gripped the Council. The other 4 battle groups had suffered similar encounters. None were destroyed, yet none had returned unharmed. It was as if the humans wanted them to survive, to carry the story home. The Council tried to hide the truth, but the crews talked. Word spread across the Empire like wildfire. The humans were real. They were powerful beyond comprehension. And they had chosen mercy over annihilation. To many, that mercy was more terrifying than death itself. Meanwhile, in the outer sectors, more Terran fleets appeared, not to invade, but to rebuild. They restored power to derelict colonies, neutralized pirate fleets, healed ecosystems poisoned by industrial wars. Their technology was self-repairing, silent, and efficient. They asked nothing in return. The citizens of the galaxy began to call them ghosts, angels of the void. But Olin saw the pattern. Every world they touched had once been part of old Earth's influence, during the first wave of colonization 10 millennia ago. They weren't conquering. They were reclaiming their lost children. Scholar Lyra Venn, stripped of her rank but still obsessed, found Olin after his return. She was thinner now, her eyes haunted, her voice trembling with both awe and fear. "You saw them, didn't you?" He nodded. "I spoke to one of their leaders, Commander Reese Calder." Her breath caught. "Then it's true. They've come back for the galaxy." "No," Olin said softly. "They've come back for us, to remind us what we once were capable of, and what we became instead." She frowned. "You sound almost reverent." "Reverent?" "No, I'm terrified." He stared at the star map. "We've built an empire on lies, Lyra. We called ourselves civilized while we erased everything that challenged our dominance. The humans didn't vanish. They hid. And now they're showing us the difference between strength and cruelty." Lyra hesitated. "If they wanted peace, why use fear?" Olan met her gaze. "Because mercy means nothing if it comes from weakness. They want us to see mercy as power." Over the next months, the Terran presence expanded. They created neutral zones, safe havens for refugees of all species, guarded by automated fleets that no one could breach. The Dominion tried once to attack one of these sanctuaries. Their fleet simply vanished. Days later, every ship reappeared, empty, floating dead, with a single message carved into their hulls. Mercy was offered. It was refused. The Concordance finally requested formal contact. They sent Lyra as the envoy. Olan accompanied her, though he doubted it would matter. The Terrans had chosen the time and place. the ruins of an old orbital citadel above a planet once called Gaia 3. The moment they arrived, the Terran flagship appeared, silent and vast. A single figure waited inside, a human man in dark uniform with silver insignia shaped like a broken star. Reese Calder. His eyes were calm, but old, older than any man's should be. Lyra stepped forward. "You've shown your power, Commander. What do you seek from us?" Reese regarded her for a long moment before answering. "We seek remembrance. We watched your wars, your cruelty, your endless empires. You learned nothing from our extinction. Then why not destroy us?" she asked, her voice trembling. He stepped closer, his expression unreadable. "Because once we were like you, afraid, divided, desperate to control what we didn't understand. We nearly ended ourselves. And in that ending, we learned the only truth that matters. Dominance is weakness disguised as pride." Olin spoke then. "You believe mercy makes you strong?" Reese smiled faintly. "Mercy built our survival. We learned to kill without hatred, to protect without conquest, to judge without cruelty. But we are not saints, Admiral. We are Deathworlders, and even our mercy has limits." As he spoke, the planet below came alive, vast cities rising from the ground like unfolding origami, powered by impossible energy sources. The sky glowed with artificial auroras. It was beautiful and terrifying all at once. Reese turned his gaze toward the stars. "We will not rule the galaxy, but we will not allow it to consume itself either. Your empires will fall, your systems will change, and from the ruins, something stronger will grow." Lyra's voice broke. "You mean to reshape the galaxy?" He nodded slowly. "We mean to remind it what survival costs." And with that, the human fleet vanished again, leaving only the echo of their presence, a silence that carried more weight than 1,000 wars. As the shuttle drifted in orbit, Lyra turned to Olin. "Do you think they're gods?" Olin stared into the void, where the Terrans had been moments before. "No," he said quietly. "They're what happens when gods forget they were human." And somewhere, beyond the reach of known space, the Deathworlders prepared for what came next. Not war, but revelation. Because mercy, once given, would not last forever. The galaxy began to change under Terran shadow, not through conquest or terror, but through quiet, deliberate control that no one could resist. The empires called them ghosts because they never stayed in one place. They would appear above a world broken by war or famine, restore it in days, and vanish before anyone could even form a delegation. They would disable fleets without bloodshed, heal ecosystems that had been dead for centuries, and offer technologies that defied all known science. They built cities out of ruins, stabilized stars on the verge of collapse, and silenced entire pirate sectors without firing a single shot. The message behind their actions was clear. We are not your enemies, but we are watching. In the Concordance capital, panic simmered beneath the surface. The Council had become irrelevant overnight. Power was no longer dictated by armies or credits, but by proximity to Terran mercy. Planets that once begged for protection from the Council now refused to pay tribute. The Dominion's fleets withdrew from the border zones they once ruled, afraid of provoking another silent disappearance. And through it all, the humans said nothing. They made no demands. They offered no alliances. They simply were. Scholar Lyra Venn found herself summoned again, not as a researcher this time, but as an advisor. The Council wanted her to interpret Terran intent. She spent nights poring over data streams, intercepted transmissions, and the few fragments of language recorded during encounters. There was a pattern, one she could almost feel but not quite name, a philosophy underlying everything they did. It wasn't domination, but it wasn't altruism either. It was something older. Corrective balance, perhaps. A Deathworld's idea of order. Admiral Olin had been stripped of his fleet after the Dyson incident, but his name still carried weight. He and Lyra often met in secret, sharing what the Council refused to acknowledge, One evening, as the suns of the capital sank into the silver horizon, Olan stared out the viewport of his small quarters. "You ever wonder why they waited this long?" he asked. Lyra looked up from her console. Maybe they weren't ready. Maybe they wanted to see what the galaxy would do without them. He shook his head. "No, they're too deliberate for that. They let us forget them. They wanted us blind when they returned," she frowned. "Why?" "Because you can't fear what you don't remember." And they didn't want to be feared. They wanted to be believed. That night, a new transmission arrived across every concordance system simultaneously. It was the first direct broadcast from the Terrans. No voice, no emblem, just a symbol. A broken circle surrounding a burning star. Beneath it, 6 words in every known language. The shadow of memory has ended. Within hours, fleets across the outer sectors began reporting sightings of colossal structures appearing in deep space. Rings of metal kilometers across, orbiting invisible gravitational centers. They weren't weapons or habitats. They seemed to pulse with slow, rhythmic energy. When scientists studied their emissions, they found something impossible. The rings were stabilizing space-time distortions. The humans were repairing the fabric of the galaxy itself. For the first time in recorded history, the universe was quiet. No border wars, no raids. Even the Dominion, famous for its brutality, went silent. Every empire watched and waited, trying to understand the motives of beings who could alter stars, and yet spoke of mercy. Olan was summoned by the council once more. The chamber was tense, filled with murmured arguments and fear disguised as strategy. The High Speaker addressed him coldly. "Admiral, your experience with the Terrans makes you uniquely suited to lead our new defense initiative. We will rebuild our fleets and prepare for the inevitable." "The inevitable?" Olan repeated. "You mean war?" "They are consolidating control over the fringe. Sooner or later they'll expand further." Olan's eyes narrowed. "They already control everything that matters, and they haven't killed a single one of us. You want war with gods who refuse to act like gods?" "They are not gods," the speaker snapped. "They are humans, flesh and blood, and flesh can die." Olan leaned forward. "Maybe. But before you try to kill them, ask yourself, how do you kill something that spent 10,000 years learning how not to die?" His warning went unheeded. The Council authorized Operation Dawnfire, a covert mission to infiltrate one of the Terran constructs and steal its core technology. They believed the Terran strength came from those rings, and if they could capture one, they might level the playing field. Olan refused to participate. Lyra, out of curiosity and dread, went anyway. The infiltration fleet moved under stealth fields older than most species in the Concordance. They entered a system marked only as T Sigma Prime. A massive ring floated near a blue dwarf star, its surface alive with faint light. It was silent. No transmissions, no ships. The fleet's commander, a hard-faced Tharkian named Vel Druz, ordered the boarding teams to deploy. Drones attached to the ring's hull and began cutting through. Within seconds, the cutters vaporized, their molecular bonds collapsing. The drones disintegrated into dust. Then a voice spoke over every frequency. "Calm, cold, familiar. You have taken what is not yours." The lesson begins. Every ship's systems went dead. The fleet hung motionless. The stars seemed to stretch and twist around them. Then, one by one, the ships disappeared, vanished without explosion, without light. Lyra woke up hours, or maybe days, later on the surface of a world she didn't recognize. Her suit's sensors told her the atmosphere was breathable, but the readings made no sense. Gravity was fluctuating slightly, as if the planet itself was alive. Around her stood the remnants of the infiltration team, Tharkians, Arcturans, and a few humans born in the Concordance core. All alive, none injured, but all silent with fear. In the distance rose a city of black glass and steel, stretching into the clouds. There were no guards, no weapons, only silence. As they approached, the air shimmered and figures appeared. Human figures. They were tall, lean, and eerily calm. Their faces held no expression, but their eyes glowed faintly. Machines woven into flesh. One stepped forward. Lyra recognized him instantly. "Commander Reese Calder, welcome to Sol Sanctuary," he said. "The heart of what you sought to steal." Lyra swallowed hard. "Why bring us here?" "To teach you," Reese replied. "Your kind still believes survival means domination. But survival without purpose is corruption. You destroy to protect what you do not deserve." Veldrew spat. "You lecture us while you manipulate half the galaxy like puppets?" Reese's gaze turned cold. "Manipulate? No, we are restraining chaos before it devours creation. We tried to lead once. It ended in ruin. So now, we balance." He turned his eyes to Lyra. "Do you understand what that means, scholar?" She hesitated. "You're not rebuilding an empire, you're repairing something larger." Reese nodded. "The galaxy's stability. Entropy eats at the edges of all things. Matter, energy, even civilizations. We learned to slow it, to shape it. We built the rings to heal the wounds left by millennia of arrogance. But your council saw only a weapon." Veldrew shouted. "Then why not share it? Why hoard the power of creation?" Reese's voice softened, almost sad. "Because no one who desires power deserves it." The ground trembled. The black glass of the city rippled like liquid. From beneath it rose colossal shapes. Machines larger than mountains, humanoid in outline but vast beyond comprehension. They moved slowly, reshaping the land beneath them, sculpting valleys and rivers with surgical precision. Reese raised his hand. "This is what we became, flesh and machine, will and logic entwined. We are not gods, but caretakers of the scars left by our ancestors. And yours." Lyra's voice trembled. "What will you do with us?" "You will return," he said simply. "Tell your council the truth. Tell them that we will not invade. But if they attempt to disrupt the balance again, we will end them, not with fire, but with erasure." The world blurred. Light enveloped them. When it faded, Lyra and the others stood once more aboard their flagship, in orbit around the Concordance capital. The fleet was whole. No time had passed. Only a message remained in their logs. Mercy is not infinite. The council tried to hide the incident, but the truth spread faster than lies ever could. The footage of the living machines, of Reese Calder's calm warning, appeared on every broadcast across the galaxy. Riots broke out on core worlds. Citizens demanded peace, demanded the council stand down. Some worshipped the humans as gods. Others cursed them as demons. But none could deny one thing. The galaxy no longer belonged to the species that once ruled it. Olan watched the chaos unfold from the shadows. He knew what was coming next. The Terrans had given their warning. The council would not heed it. Pride would demand retaliation. And when they struck again, the humans would not show restraint. That night, he received a private transmission. A human woman this time, her face illuminated by pale light. Her eyes were a soft gray, her tone quiet but resolute. "Admiral Olan," she said, "you understand more than your leaders. When the storm comes, do not stand in its path. Remember, mercy is the weapon of the strong. We offered it once. We will not offer it twice. Who are you?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "The one who remembers Earth." The message ended. Olan sat in silence for a long time, staring at the stars. He thought of the old myths, of a planet that gave birth to monsters who learned compassion, and gods who learned regret. And he realized then that the galaxy wasn't witnessing its end. It was witnessing its judgment. The Deathworlders had returned not to destroy, but to decide. And the time for mercy was running out. The battle for the ecliptic corridor had left the galaxy in stunned silence. The Dominion fleets were shattered, their capital world crippled, and the unity of the great Galactic Council fractured beyond repair. Yet amid the ashes, there was something else, something none of them could explain. The humans had not stayed to claim territory, to plunder, or even to negotiate. They had vanished. The Deathworlders, once forgotten myths, had returned from the shadows to deliver ruin, and then simply disappeared into the void, leaving behind only questions and fear. The survivors whispered of them like ancient spirits, unseen, untouchable, and impossibly powerful. Every communication network, every political forum, every backroom meeting now revolved around one singular question: Where had humanity gone? Admiral Corvin of the Vassari Republic sat alone in the observation deck of his flagship, the Tyrant's Blade, staring into the cold light of distant stars. His ship had been one of the few to survive the assault on Sector 12, and though his systems had recovered, his mind had not. He had seen a single human ship, a black, angular vessel with no insignia, cut through an entire battle line as if it were made of paper. No energy readings, no engine signatures, no predictable trajectories. It had simply moved, as though it existed slightly outside the same reality. And when his ship's targeting sensors locked onto it, they found nothing. He remembered the moment clearly. The flickering hologram of a human face appearing on his bridge display, calm and emotionless, speaking in a voice that carried no malice and yet terrified everyone who heard it. "You forgot what you did," the voice had said. "But we never did." Then his entire fleet was gone in a flash of light, and the human ship was gone with it. In the weeks that followed, rumors spread like wildfire. Some claimed the humans had built their own realm deep in the unexplored fringes of the Perseus Arm, hidden from the rest of the galaxy. Others said they had transcended material existence entirely, existing as pure consciousness or energy. The most unsettling rumors came from the refugee fleets that drifted through the ruins of burned sectors. They spoke of Deathworlder ghosts appearing in ruined colonies, humans in strange armor helping survivors, healing the wounded, and then disappearing without a trace. The Galactic Council called these tales sympathetic hallucinations, but deep down everyone knew better. The Deathworlders were watching. The Council convened in the shattered remains of Virel Station. Once a shining center of diplomacy, it now drifted half-ruined, surrounded by the wreckage of what had been the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. The chamber was dim, filled with the exhausted faces of leaders who had once thought themselves masters of a civilized universe. Chancellor Velnar of the Dominion stood, his scaled face pale under the sterile lights. "We cannot let this stand," he hissed. "Humanity's existence is a direct threat to every species in this galaxy. They have weapons we cannot understand, tactics that defy reason. They fight without fear, without mercy, and then they vanish. We must find them before they strike again." The hall murmured in uneasy agreement, though not all were convinced. From the shadows of the assembly rose a smaller figure, a Loran scientist named Athean, known for her research into xenobiological adaptations. "You speak of them as monsters," she said quietly, "but perhaps we made them so. Do you remember what the old archives said of Earth? Of the exile? The death of their sun colonies? The purge fleets that drove them into the dark? You call them predators, Chancellor, but we were the hunters once." Her words hung heavy in the air. Many remembered. Few dared to admit it. Centuries ago, before the modern council had even formed, humanity had been declared an anomaly, a species too violent, too unpredictable, too adaptable to coexist with the wider galactic order. Their world had been classified as a Class X death world, its inhabitants deemed unsalvageable. The extermination fleets had been sent under the justification of preserving peace, but the humans had not died. They had simply disappeared. Some believed they destroyed themselves. Others thought they escaped. But now it was clear. They had survived, and they had evolved. Meanwhile, on the distant edge of known space, deep within the ruins of a forgotten Dyson ring, something ancient stirred. A massive vessel drifted among the wreckage, its hull grown over with dark organic plating that pulsed faintly like living skin. Inside, humans moved in silence, wearing armor that hummed with faint energy. One of them stood apart, watching holographic projections of the recent galactic skirmishes. His name was Commander Elias Varric, once of Earth's United Defense Corps, now leader of what the galaxy whispered about as the Ghost Legions. His face was lined with age and battle scars, his eyes cold but not unkind. "They're looking for us," said a voice behind him, a woman, her voice smooth and steady. "Lieutenant Mei Lin, one of the few who still smiled in this dark age." "They'll keep looking," Varric replied, "but they'll find only echoes. We didn't come back to rule. We came to remind them." "Remind them of what?" "That mercy is not weakness. That strength can protect as well as destroy, and that even in the darkest corners of this galaxy, there are consequences for forgetting humanity. The humans had changed during their exile. They had learned to survive in the most hostile worlds imaginable, places where no other life could endure. They had fought, adapted, and evolved beyond what anyone thought possible. The Deathworlders were not merely humans hardened by struggle. They were the descendants of survivors who had merged technology with instinct, machine with biology, and discipline with fury. They had watched the galaxy fall into complacency, into decadence, into cruelty, and when it finally turned upon itself, they emerged not as conquerors, but as judges. But the galaxy, ever arrogant, could not see it that way. Fleets were dispatched into the outer void, commanded by generals who believed they could hunt what they did not understand. They sent probes into the dark regions, seeking the hidden human enclaves. Every single one vanished without a trace. One probe, however, returned a faint transmission. A single image burned into its recording buffer. A human face, eyes glowing faintly blue, whispering a phrase that would echo in every language known. "You called us monsters, but monsters are what you made us." Back at Varel Station, the Council descended into chaos. Some species demanded peace talks. Others screamed for extermination. The old alliances fractured completely. The Loran scientist Athene was branded a sympathizer when she argued that coexistence might still be possible. Yet her words found followers, those who had seen the humans in action and realized something deeper. The Deathworlders were not seeking dominance. They were watching, waiting, testing whether the galaxy had learned from its sins. In a quiet corner of the galaxy, Admiral Corvin found himself haunted by dreams. Each night he saw Earth as it had been, green and blue, wild and beautiful, and then saw it burning. He began searching the old archives, uncovering truths buried under centuries of propaganda. The Dominion had erased records, rewritten history, and buried the evidence of the purges that had driven humanity into exile. The deeper he dug, the more he realized that the humans' return was not vengeance. It was justice. Word soon spread that strange signals were being detected near the ancient human colonies in the Perseus Rift. The signals pulsed in rhythmic patterns, resembling the old human Morse code, though few could decipher it. The Council dismissed them as anomalies, but independent explorers, curious or desperate, ventured into the rift. Only one transmission ever came back. It was a single sentence, transmitted in clear galactic standard. "We remember the light you took from us, and we are the light that remains." By then, the humans were no longer shadows. They were a force shaping destiny. Every fallen empire, every corrupt council member, every warlord who preyed upon the weak, found themselves haunted by unseen hands. Supply lines failed mysteriously. Pirate fleets vanished. Slave markets burned overnight. The Deathworlders left no signatures, no traces, only results. Some called them angels, others called them demons. But to those who understood, they were simply human. As the galaxy began to crumble under its own guilt, whispers spread that a reckoning was coming. A final test of whether the civilizations that had once condemned Earth had learned to be more than predators themselves. Commander Varric stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the stars through reinforced glass. "The galaxy forgot us," he said quietly, almost to himself. "But now they'll remember not our wrath but our mercy." Lieutenant Lin turned to him. "And if they refuse to change?" Varric's eyes hardened. "Then mercy will end where their cruelty begins." And beyond the cold edges of the Milky Way, the Deathworlders stirred once more. Not as conquerors, but as guardians of a truth too long forgotten. Humanity had returned from the shadows, not to reclaim the galaxy, but to remind it of what it had lost when it tried to erase them: compassion, courage, and the unbreakable fire of survival. The stars, it seemed, had never stopped belonging to humankind. They had simply been waiting for them to come home. The galaxy stood at the edge of revelation and ruin. The Deathworlders had re-emerged from legend, their shadow stretching across every known system. The once proud Dominion fleets lay shattered. The Republic colonies burned or abandoned, and the great Galactic Council, once a symbol of unity, now fractured into 100 warring factions. Yet even amidst all this chaos, there was something profoundly strange. The humans did not take advantage of their victory. They did not conquer, they did not occupy, they did not even speak. They simply watched. Entire fleets would detect their ships, dark and silent, hovering beyond the reach of sensors, then vanish before any attempt at contact. Some called it psychological warfare. Others whispered that humanity was testing them, weighing their worth before deciding whether to save or destroy them. And for many, that uncertainty was worse than any weapon. Admiral Corvin could not sleep. Night after night, his dreams were filled with the echo of the human voice that had once spoken to him. Calm, cold, filled with something ancient and sorrowful. "You forgot what you did, but we never did." Those words haunted him, driving him to the edge of obsession. He had begun to see the truth that others denied. The humans weren't acting out of hatred. Their silence wasn't arrogance, it was restraint. They could destroy the galaxy if they wished, but they hadn't. And that, Corvin realized, was the most terrifying thing of all, because it meant they were choosing to give the galaxy a chance to change. Meanwhile, deep in the Perseus Rift, within the human fortress world known as Solara Prime, Commander Elias Varric stood upon a cliff overlooking the crimson horizon. The world beneath his boots had once been a barren rock, a failed mining colony abandoned centuries ago. Now it was the heart of the Deathworlders' resurgence, transformed into a living citadel of technology and nature intertwined. Towering spires of black metal rose from oceans of red mist, connected by bridges of pulsing light. Below him, thousands of Deathworlders trained in silence. No banners, no symbols, no chants, just discipline, just purpose. They were not soldiers in the traditional sense. They were guardians. Each one born of the Deathworlds humanity had been exiled to, each one carrying scars, both physical and spiritual. Lieutenant Mei Lin approached him quietly, her eyes reflecting the glow of the horizon. "You've been standing here for hours," she said. "The Council's spies are getting bolder. We've intercepted at least 7 more fleets probing the outer sectors." Varric nodded, his gaze never leaving the sky. "They still don't understand," he said softly. "They think this is war. But war was never the point." Lin tilted her head, studying him. "Then what is the point, Commander?" Varric turned to face her, his eyes cold and resolute. "Remembrance," he said. "They forgot what they did to us, what they did to themselves. We were their mirror once, raw, flawed, and human. Now they look at us and see the cost of their own arrogance." Across the galaxy, rebellion simmered. Worlds that had long suffered under the Dominion's control began to rise. Species once deemed primitive began to resist, inspired by whispers of Deathworlders fighting on their behalf. A slave uprising on Erevan Prime claimed that a group of humans had appeared during the revolt. Tall figures clad in dark armor, who moved faster than the eye could follow. They freed thousands, dismantled the Overseer's control grids, and vanished before dawn. When the Dominion tried to retake the planet, they found their own ships crippled by invisible strikes. It was as if the humans had become living myths, appearing where justice was absent, striking with precision, and leaving behind nothing but freedom and fear. In the ruins of Virel Station, the fractured council met for what would be the last time. Chancellor Velnar stood at the center, his scales dulled and his voice hoarse. "We cannot allow them to dictate the fate of the galaxy," he roared. "If humanity wishes to play gods, then let them face the consequences. We must unite our fleets and strike before they strike again." Athene, the Loran scientist who had long defended humanity, rose in defiance. "Strike? Against what? Against ghosts? Against the very species we once tried to erase? You would make the same mistake again." Her voice echoed through the hollow chamber. "You speak of gods, Chancellor, but perhaps that's what frightens you, the realization that they are more human than we ever were." Velnar's eyes flared with rage. "They are monsters," he spat. "They destroy without mercy. They manipulate. They protect," Athene interrupted sharply. "You fear them because they remind you what real power looks like. Power guided by morality instead of greed. You called them Deathworlders to justify your cruelty, but tell me, Chancellor, who made their world a death world in the first place? Silence followed. The chamber's lights flickered, and for a brief moment, every holographic display in the room went dark. Then a symbol appeared in the air, a circle of light with a burning star at its center, the insignia of old Earth. A voice filled the room, deep and clear, calm but commanding. You seek to strike at us, it said, but your weapons are not what we fear. It is your blindness. You forget that every empire built upon suffering will crumble beneath its own weight. We will not destroy you, Chancellor Velnar. We will let you destroy yourselves. And just as suddenly as it appeared, the symbol vanished. Panic swept the council. Half of the members fled the meeting. The others accused one another of treachery. By the time order was restored, the council was no more. Each species turned inward, preparing for a war that would never come. The Deathworlders didn't need to fight them. Their fear was already doing the work. Back on Solara Prime, Varric received the intercepted transmission and closed the projection with a heavy sigh. They're tearing themselves apart, Lynn said quietly. Every government, every fleet. They're turning on each other. Varric nodded, as they always do when they're afraid, but some will remember. He activated a secondary display showing a list of independent worlds, planets that had broken from the Council and declared neutrality. These are the ones who still believe in the old ways, coexistence, understanding. We'll reach out to them first. Lynn frowned. Openly? No, Varric said. Quietly, the galaxy isn't ready for our return. Not yet. Time passed. Decades, maybe. In the void of space, time lost meaning. But slowly, subtly, humanity's presence began to shape the galaxy once more. Trade routes reopened, but they carried more than goods, they carried ideas. Ancient human philosophies resurfaced, teachings of empathy, cooperation, resilience. Even the Dominion, weakened and paranoid, began reforming its institutions. The shadow of the Deathworlders had forced them all to confront what they had become. Admiral Corvin, now an old man, finally found what he had been searching for. His entire life. In a derelict system on the edge of the Orion Spur, he discovered a planet untouched by war. It was beautiful. Lush forests, oceans that shimmered with blue fire, skies that reminded him of the old archives' descriptions of Earth. When his ship descended, he found ruins there. Not alien, but human. Statues half buried in sand, inscribed with words in an ancient language. At the heart of the ruins stood a monument. A single obsidian pillar carved with the phrase, "They called us Deathworlders. We called ourselves human." As Corvin stood before it, he felt a presence, a faint shimmer in the air. A figure stepped from the shadows, clad in black armor that reflected no light. A human. "You've come far, Admiral," the man said softly. "Most wouldn't dare." Corvin fell to one knee, not in fear, but in awe. "I needed to understand," he whispered. "Why you came back, why you didn't destroy us." The human regarded him for a long time, then removed his helmet. His face was worn but not cruel, his eyes filled with both sorrow and compassion. "Because once we were you," he said. "Lost, arrogant, blind. But we learned. We remembered that strength without empathy is nothing but decay. We came back, not to avenge ourselves, but to give the galaxy one last chance to learn what we had to learn the hard way." Corvin looked up, tears in his eyes. "And if we fail?" The human's expression hardened slightly. "Then history will repeat, but not with us as its victims." He turned away, and within moments, he was gone, leaving the Admiral alone before the monument. Years later, when Corvin's final report reached what remained of the galactic archives, it was dismissed as myth. But among the smaller worlds, the story spread. A story of a forgotten species that returned from the shadows not as conquerors, but as guardians of something the galaxy had lost. Compassion, resilience, humanity. And somewhere, beyond the edge of known space, the Deathworlders watched the stars in silence, waiting for the day when the galaxy would no longer need their shadow to remember the light. because that, above all else, was the final truth they had learned, that mercy, not vengeance, was the strongest weapon a Deathworlder could ever wield.